Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing Dumpers Remorse, the hard truth. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing Dumpers Remorse, the hard truth. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will want your ex to feel Dumpers Remorse. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 points to consider about the hard truth of Dumpers Remorse. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is remorse isn't guaranteed. So if you're a dumpee and you're listening to this, you have no doubt gone through the thought process of thinking, right, I just need to move forward as best I can with my life. I need to implement the no contact rule. And then when my ex-dumper starts to feel remorse, they will contact me and we can get back together. Now, although what you may be thinking is absolutely the hopeful way that we would like to think things are going to pan out, we have to be honest and understand that remorse isn't guaranteed. So even though the process in your mind of living your life the right way, implementing no contact, your ex-dumper at some stage feeling remorse, then reaching out to you, then getting back together, even though that is the process which could get you back together one day, we have to understand this isn't guaranteed. It is not definitive that your ex-dumper will feel remorse in the future for breaking your heart and ending the relationship. This isn't guaranteed. Now, if you live your life the right way, dumpees, you absolutely give yourself the best possible chance of success of your ex-dumper one day feeling remorse. One day feeling regret, one day regrowing that level of romantic emotional attraction that unfortunately they lost by the time of a breakup. There is every chance it could happen. However, we can't set our watch by it and say, right, well, I'm just going to live my life and wait for them to feel remorse. That isn't guaranteed. Now look, living your life the right way is the absolute best way to go. It's certainly much better than sitting around. And if you sit around and clock watch and think, well, my ex is going to feel remorse one day, unfortunately, you're reducing your chances even further by not living your life in a way which actually increases your chance of success. Instead, by sitting around, you are reducing that possibility. But even if you do everything which is right, even if you do everything which is by the book, this doesn't definitively mean you can get your ex back. Because unfortunately, there is no 100% guaranteed way to get an ex back. Nothing works 100% of the time, and nothing fails 100% of the time. But what we must do is increase our chance of success rather than reducing it. So don't get annoyed and upset if you live your life in a positive way, but don't get your ex back, because we can only control the controllables. And if you can go to bed at night knowing you've done your best by living your life the best way you can, then you can rest easy. You can relax and know, I gave it my best shot. Okay, this doesn't seem to have worked out. However, I know I did my best. That's all any of us can do. Now, incidentally, it's hard to actually pinpoint when you might come to that decision that it's not going to work out for you, because we never know when the story ends. We might understand that right now, in the current life chapter that we are going through, our ex is not part of it, but it doesn't mean they can't have a starring role 2 or 3 chapters down the line. Remember, we never know when the story ends. However, this isn't just something that you can think to yourself, well, later down the line, my ex will be back. That would definitely happen. You can't live your life in a way where you're putting all of your thoughts and feelings on your ex, just assuming they're going to come back, because there is no guarantee they'll feel remorse. Even if you do everything you can to enhance your chances, we can't guarantee it, unfortunately. So when we're considering Dumpers Remorse, the hard truth, it's really important to start off by saying them feeling regret and remorse is not guaranteed. Now, if you behave in a negative way, if you act needy and desperate, if you are negative, whether this is by chasing your ex or negative by the words you say to your ex, maybe you're abusive through frustration or something to that effect, then we can say you are reducing that chance of getting your ex back. And maybe if you have done that, you can acknowledge and understand why, if you don't get them back, why it didn't happen. Sometimes, though, it's actually tougher to get your head round if you know and believe and understand you have done everything possibly you could in the right way and you still haven't as of yet reconnected. Like I said, we never know when the story ends. Maybe your ex-dumper will contact you with feelings of remorse 3 months from now, just when you've started to think, well, it's never going to happen. We never know. And I would never say never, but you can't wait around. You can't clock watch. You can't stand still and say, well, I'm not going to meet anyone new. I'm not going to make any new connections. I'm not going to consider dating anybody else because I'm only waiting for my ex. We can't do that because it's not guaranteed. And that's the point. Sometimes dumpees will think, well, if I'm following the advice A, B, and C, I definitely will get my ex back because that's what I'm told to do. Unfortunately, relationships, breakups, reconnections, it is not something like a maths equation. It's not paint by numbers advice. This, unfortunately, is something which is more like a free-flowing art form where we can't pinpoint precisely everything that maybe you could in a mathematic equation. So with that being said, please try to remember that the future can't be decided by you living your life precisely the right way. And whether you do or whether you don't, your ex-dumper may not feel remorse. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is remorse doesn't equate reconnection. So when we consider the possibility that your ex-dumper does feel remorse, they get to that stage where they feel regretful, they reach out to you, well, this is a good sign, dumpees. This is something that you, of course, are looking for. However, this doesn't necessarily equate to reconnection. Your ex-dumper regretting their decision, feeling remorseful, does not definitively mean you're going to get back together. What it likely means is that they will reach out to you. Most dumpers who start to feel remorse will at some stage try and reach out to their dumpee. Now, they may knock on your door, they may give you a telephone call, but much more likely is they will send you a text, some type of message on a messaging app. That is the most likely way a dumper will reach out to their dumpee if they're feeling remorse. However, that is the only thing which can be somewhat predicted due to your ex-dumper feeling remorse. Even that can't be 100% guaranteed because, as I said, nothing in life sadly can be, especially when it's connected to relationships, breakups, reconnection. We can't guarantee this, but we have to look at the patterns. And most dumpers who feel remorse will reach out to their dumpees. Okay, that is something that we can be fairly confident most of the time is likely to happen. If you receive contact from your ex for an unnecessary reason, it is likely there is a level of regret and remorse in their mind. They won't necessarily say it. In fact, it's very likely that they won't say it. They're not likely to say to you, hey, I'm feeling remorseful, so I wanted to say hi. No, it's much more likely to be a message which seems quite random to you. However, if they send you contact which is unnecessary, it must be coming from some type of place within their mind that they want to speak with you, they want to communicate with you, and therefore we can equate in that regard that they must be feeling at least some level of regret and remorse, else why are they contacting you for an unnecessary reason? However, we can't be celebrating at this stage, because although you've got past the no contact stage if your ex-dumper reaches out, we have now entered the communication stage. And this is what I'm talking about here in point number 2. Remorse doesn't equate reconnection. Remorse equates the likelihood of your ex-dumper reaching out, which is wonderful. That is great that you are through the no contact stage, but now you've entered the communication stage. And even if your ex-dumper feels regret about ending your relationship, if a communication stage doesn't go well, if it doesn't go the way that they hope and or you hope, then sadly, this won't progress to the meeting stage. And even if it progresses to the meeting stage, well, we then have to see if it can progress beyond that into actual reconnection. So, what can we take from this? Well, ultimately, we can see, as point number 2 states, that remorse doesn't equate reconnection. It equates a likely outcome of your ex-dumper reaching out to you. That's great, but the job isn't done. So when dumpees say to me, well, I just need to wait for my ex to feel remorse, well, like I said in point number 1, sadly, that might never happen. But secondly, in point number 2, even if it does, even if your ex-dumper tells a mutual friend of yours who passes the info on, saying, hey, they're feeling a lot of regret about what's happened, you can't celebrate the fact of getting back together at this point because you haven't yet. The job isn't done. Yes, it's a good sign. Yes, it's a positive step in the right direction. Yes, if you are told by a mutual friend but your ex-dumper feels this way, it will likely be followed in the not too distant future by some type of reach out from your dumper. This doesn't mean you're back together. You're not back together yet. They've reached out to you, they feel regret, but there still is work to be done. Now, how you navigate the communication stage will somewhat dictate whether you get to the meeting stage, and then when you meet will somewhat dictate if you get back together. Now, this isn't just about their perspective. Maybe they feel remorse, and maybe you aren't so sure about your thoughts and feelings at that time when they reach out to you. Every possibility has to be on the table here because we just don't know. But please don't get confused and muddled up by thinking that remorse equates reconnection, because it doesn't. It's a good sign, but there's certainly more to do. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the buildup of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about dumpers' remorse, the hard truth. And point number 3 is be careful what you wish for. So as a dumpee, you are likely feeling a longing for your ex-dumper. Now maybe this was because you had a perfect relationship and you loved them more than anybody before them, and you believe you will love them more than anybody after them. But I would suggest the reality is somewhat connected to the fact that there is nothing more attractive than rejection. If we are rejected from something, or if we are rejected by someone, we automatically find that situation, find that person even more attractive than we ever did. I dare say, dumpees, you find the pull of your ex-dumper more powerful now than when you were actually together in a relationship. When you were together, maybe you felt it was great, but I'm sure that you actually feel more love, if that's what you're going to think and call it right now, more love towards them now than you actually did when you were together. And if you're being honest and thoughtful, I dare say that is the truth there. There is nothing more attractive than rejection. Rejection breeds obsession. When you were rejected by your ex-dumper ending your relationship, you started to feel that pull. You started to feel the pull because rejection breeds obsession. Now, maybe you would consider yourself obsessed to your ex. Maybe you would disagree with that. But what I would say is that you and your ex-dumper have had a power shift regarding the breakup and how you were previous. Now, maybe it's a large shift, maybe it's not that big, but I'm sure you will see that your ex-dumper is holding the cards right now. And therefore, you are likely desiring your ex-dumper so much more, like I said, than perhaps you ever did in the relationship. But you need to be careful what you wish for, because sometimes, in fact, I would say often, your ex-dumper isn't as good as you remember. You're viewing things wearing rose-tinted glasses. You are imagining your ex to be some type of superstar. You're idolizing them. You're putting them on a pedestal. You think they're a superhero. You think they are the best man or the best woman that has ever lived. You are making them superhuman in something which I can tell you they're not. They're a human being. They have flaws. They will make mistakes. They will have situations going off in their own life that maybe you knew about, maybe you didn't, which will make them behave in a way which isn't perfect because they're not a robot. And I'm guaranteeing you that you can find someone better than your ex. If you live your life the right way, if you don't get your ex back, or even if you can, you might decide you want to try and find someone even better. And one of the reasons for this is that dumpees are much more likely to grow than their ex-dumper. A dumpee will get to the stage where they feel that they need to grow as a person, become a version 2.0 of themselves. Your ex-dumper is not as likely to go through that desirable change. They're not likely to have that pull and that push and those rocket boosters to become a better person. So if you find out that your ex-dumper is feeling remorse for the breakup, if they reach out to you, if you decide that you want to meet, if you grow this conversation in the right way and actually get to the stage of reconnecting, maybe you do actually get back together. Sometimes you need to be careful what you wish for because the person you have started to idolize is probably not the reality. You might get back together and a few months down the line, you actually become the dumper because you realize and recognize you've grown and they haven't. You realize and recognize that they're not as good as you actually believed they were to be. Maybe they never was, or maybe they seem to be in the past, but certainly not so much now. Maybe they've grown a little, but you've grown much more, and you feel you've outgrown them. I know of many dumpees who get their ex back and then actually become dumpers further down the line because they no longer feel aligned. So when we're talking about the hard truths about dumpers' remorse, sometimes we just have to look at it and think, okay, they might feel remorse, they might want to get back together, I might give them that chance, but it still might not work out because we need to be careful what we wish for because we're idolizing the dumper right now. And if they come back to us, we put them on that pedestal and think our life is now sorted, it's exciting, it's wonderful, it's brilliant, we're back together. But guess what? Maybe your true happiness actually lies with someone else. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.